For most, a crown symbolizes power and a life of unbelievable luxury. But for a select group of royal women throughout history, that crown was a death sentence. They were born to rule, yet their bodies were not their own. They were political instruments, valued almost entirely for their womb. Their single, inescapable duty was to secure the throne, a duty that trapped them on a relentless treadmill of pregnancy, forcing them to bear heir after heir, until the very act of creation destroyed them. To be a queen before modern medicine was to live with a constant, looming threat. Childbirth was a battlefield, and the royal bedchamber was often the most dangerous place in the kingdom. Royal status offered no immunity. In fact, it amplified the danger. The immense political pressure to produce a male heir meant queens were often denied the recovery time afforded to other women. Breastfeeding, a natural way to space out pregnancies, was frequently outsourced to wet nurses, all to ensure the queen could conceive again as quickly as possible. Their bodies became tools of the state, their reproductive health a matter of national security. And for many, this royal duty became a fatal burden. From postpartum infections, then called childbed fever, to hemorrhage and the sheer exhaustion of labors that could last for days, the risks were astronomical. These are the stories of the queens for whom the crown was not a symbol of life, but a direct path to the grave. Elizabeth of York, the reluctant matriarch. Our story begins with the woman who gave birth to the Tudor dynasty, Elizabeth of York. Her life was defined by the brutal politics of the Wars of the Roses. The daughter of King Edward IV, her world was shattered when her father died and her two younger brothers, the princes in the Tower, vanished, presumed murdered. However, her marriage to the victor, Henry Tudor, was a political masterstroke, a union designed to finally end decades of civil war by merging the houses of Lancaster and York. The pressure on Elizabeth was immediate. The new Tudor dynasty was fragile, its claim to the throne tenuous. Only a line of healthy sons could secure it. So Elizabeth began her life's most important work. Her first son, Arthur, was born just 8 months after the wedding. She would go on to have 7 children in total, but the weight of royal duty was relentless. In 1502, tragedy struck when her eldest son and heir, Arthur, died suddenly. The future of the Tudor line now rested on her one remaining son, the future Henry VIII. A single male heir was a shaky foundation for a dynasty. So, at the age of 36, despite a history of difficult pregnancies, Elizabeth risked another. She entered her confinement in the Tower of London, a place haunted by the ghosts of her lost brothers. On February 2nd, 1503, she delivered a daughter, Catherine. But the delivery was difficult. The baby died just days later. Soon after, Elizabeth herself succumbed to a post-birth infection. She died on her 37th birthday. King Henry VII was said to have been shattered, retreating into a solitary grief. He had lost the woman who secured his throne, the mother of his heir, and the queen who paid the ultimate price to found a dynasty. Jane Seymour, the queen who succeeded. 50 years after Elizabeth of York's tragic death, her own son, Henry VIII, was consumed by the same dynastic desperation. After 2 decades with Catherine of Aragon, produced only a daughter, and a fiery marriage to Anne Boleyn also ended with a daughter, Henry's obsession for a son reached a fever pitch. His solution was Jane Seymour. Quiet, demure, and the complete opposite of the outspoken Anne Boleyn, Jane caught the king's eye. Just 10 days after Anne Boleyn was beheaded, Henry married Jane. Her mission was singular: give England a prince. The pressure on her was perhaps greater than on any English queen before. A new church had been created, and 2 queens cast aside in the quest for a son. Jane knew that failure was not an option. In early 1537, the court rejoiced. The queen was pregnant. On October 12, 1537, after a grueling labor that lasted for nearly 3 days, Jane delivered a healthy baby boy, the future King Edward VI. Henry VIII was ecstatic. He had his heir, but the celebrations were short-lived. Jane at first seemed to be recovering. Then her health took a sudden, drastic turn. She was likely suffering from puerperal fever, a brutal infection caused by the unhygienic conditions of 16th century childbirth. Her condition worsened rapidly. For days, the court watched helplessly as the queen, who had fulfilled her destiny, faded away. She died just 12 days after giving birth, at the age of 29. Henry VIII was genuinely heartbroken. He gave Jane the royal funeral he denied his other wives, and when he died, he commanded he be buried beside her, forever entombed with the queen who gave him his son, and gave her life in return. Princess Charlotte, the lost queen. By the early 19th century, medicine had advanced, but the birthing room remained a place of peril. Princess Charlotte of Wales was the hope of the nation. The only child of the unpopular Prince Regent, the future George IV, she was seen as a vibrant, modern heir to the throne. In 1816, she married her love, Prince Leopold of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, and the entire nation awaited the news of a royal baby. After 2 earlier miscarriages, Charlotte became pregnant again in 1817. This baby would secure the direct line of succession. But her lead doctor, Sir Richard Croft, managed her care with the flawed medical wisdom of the day. He put her on a strict diet and bled her regularly, likely leaving her weak before labor even began. Her labor started on November 3, 1817. It was an agonizing ordeal that stretched on for over 50 hours. Croft, hesitant to use forceps, let nature take its brutal course. Finally, on the evening of November 5th, Charlotte delivered a large, stillborn son. Exhausted, she seemed to be recovering. But just 5 hours later, she began to complain of stomach pains. She had suffered a catastrophic postpartum hemorrhage. She died in the early hours of November 6th, at just 21 years old. The news devastated Britain. Charlotte's death was a national crisis. She was King George III's only legitimate grandchild, and her death left the throne without a clear successor, triggering a frantic baby race among George III's aging, unmarried sons. 3 days after Charlotte's death, her heartbroken doctor, Sir Richard Croft, died by suicide. The tragedy of the lost queen ultimately paved the way for a different monarch, her cousin, the future Queen Victoria, who was born from the dynastic scramble Charlotte's death had created. Maria II of Portugal, the queen who died at her post. Across Europe, the story was tragically similar. For Queen Maria II of Portugal, her reign was a constant battle, not just politically, but physically. Known as the Good Mother, Maria ascended the throne in a period of great turmoil. From her very first pregnancy at age 18, her labors were notoriously difficult. Her third labor lasted for 32 hours. By the age of 25, she was already a veteran of 5 pregnancies and was struggling with health complications. Her doctors repeatedly warned her of the grave dangers she faced with each successive pregnancy. They told her that her body could not withstand the strain. But Maria was bound by her duty to produce heirs and secure the Braganza dynasty. She endured 11 pregnancies in total. When warned by her physicians that another pregnancy would almost certainly kill her, her response was one of fatalistic resolve. She famously declared, "If I die at my post." Her words were prophetic. On November 15, 1853, after 13 hours of agonizing labor with her 11th child, a stillborn son, Queen Maria Ravoci died. She was just 34 years old. She died exactly as she said she would, at her post, a post that demanded her fertility, her health, and ultimately, her life. The stories of Elizabeth of York, Jane Seymour, Princess Charlotte, and Maria II, are not isolated incidents. They represent a brutal pattern woven through royal history. These women, adorned with jewels and titles, were trapped in a gilded cage of biology and destiny. Their bodies were public domain, their wombs were battlefields, and their primary purpose was to serve as vessels for the next generation of rulers. Their deaths were more than personal tragedies. They were political events that shaped the course of nations, altering the very line of kings and queens. They highlight the stark contrast of immense power and profound powerlessness. They could influence empires, but they had little control over their own bodies. For these queens, the relentless demand for an heir turned the miracle of life into a harbinger of death, and the weight of the crown became a fatal, crushing burden. The stories of these women are a vital part of our history, a powerful reminder of the human cost behind the pageantry. If you found this look into the darker side of royalty compelling, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Which of these stories resonated with you the most? And consider subscribing for more deep dives into history.